person like Putin, you can sit down and meet with him. You can have F-35s flying over his head, but there's only one thing that he understands.
I mean, Trump is the deal maker in chief, right? We know that he is the guy to get things done.
I mean, I've been on battlefields, and I've seen soldiers lose their lives. I don't want to see that. But what I do understand is that sometimes the only way you deal with a bully is to smack him in his mouth.
Another day and another rejection by the Russians of Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Ukraine. Putin's swagger is slipping, however. His army is bleeding out. His economy is running on fumes. And yet still, America hesitates. Sanctions may sting, but they don't strike. Weapons may sustain, but they're not going to win this war. Sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine could certainly send a message right to the doorsteps of Moscow, quite literally, but that call is yet to be answered. After reports of another heated row on Friday with President Zelensky at the White House and another potential meeting with Putin on the cards, what is President Trump up to? And tonight we're forced to ask the question again, is America about to abandon Ukraine? Joining me tonight is someone who's never been shy about calling out weakness where he sees it, former congressman and retired Army Colonel Alan West. And in the studio throughout tonight's show, Republican strategist Sarah Selip. Alan West, you sir, Colonel, what's going on with Donald Trump? He seems to be blowing hot and cold on Ukraine. First, he's threatening to send Tomahawk missiles, and now he's telling President Zelensky to swallow vast tracts of stolen land by the Russians. What's going on?
Well, it's good to be with you, Harry. Thanks for having me on from this side of the big pond. I think that what you look at is that, President Trump, he likes to refer back to the book that he wrote called The Art of the Deal. But I think there are times when you have to go back and read Sun Tzu's seminal work called The Art of War. And when you're dealing with despots and when you're dealing with dictators, autocrats, there are just two things that they understand, strength and might. And when I look at what is going on right now between Russia and Ukraine, it was George Santayana, the Spanish political philosopher, that said, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I see exactly what happened back in the late 1930s between the West and a person by the name of Adolf Hitler. When you continue to provide concessions, when you continue to, allow someone to have more land and you don't stand up against them. Of course, we remember Neville Chamberlain waving the piece of paper, the 1938 Munich Accords. Within a year, Hitler had already gone and overtaken Czechoslovakia. And he said it was just a piece of paper. So I think that there comes a time when you cannot have this very careful, fence walking type of policy, foreign policy, when you're dealing with a person like Putin. You can sit down and meet with him. You can have F-35s flying over his head, but there's only one thing that he understands.
And that presumably is brute force and having the windows of the Kremlin rattled with long-range American missiles, presumably.
Well, I hate to put it that way, but when you look at the fact that you are launching from Russian territory into Ukraine, and then also we see the incursions into Poland, we see some of the disturbing things that are happening in the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. We know that there are some concerns that even Finland has with some of the incursions that Russia is going about, cutting some of the pipelines, communications pipelines, oil and gas pipelines there in the Baltic Sea. So there has to be a message that is sent. And it's not just a message of the United States of America by itself. Of course, the United States of America needs to be a key and integral part. But again, it has to be the West. It has to be those European countries that want to stand up to this expansionist dictator who said that his greatest disappointment of the 20th century was the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Having said all that, Colonel, then what is Donald Trump doing? Because it seems he's sort of blowing in two directions to me. Obviously, we saw the Alaska meeting back in August. That obviously, was a attempt to sort of unlock the deadlock, but doesn't seem yet to have worked. We then saw President Trump hold an extraordinary summit at the White House with the European leaders who all pledged to, police whatever peace deal could be achieved. And then again, Putin has thumbed his nose at the West and said no dice, and said, the fundamental underlying factors of the war need to be ironed out before any peace deal. There's no ceasefire with peace. And Trump has a long conversation with Putin last week, and now seems to be back sort of almost trumpeting Putin's lines rather than Zelensky's lines. Is it the case of him just sort of listening to the last person he's spoken to, or are you concerned he's not listening to people like you who are trying to help him?
Well, I don't know if the president's going to listen to someone like myself, but I think he's trying to thread a very careful needle in that, again, he is trying to come to a solution whereby he is not upsetting certain people in his own party's base who does not want to see any quote unquote expansion of a war. Because after these several years, we've seen a lot of American resources that have gone into Ukraine. But I don't think that we're talking about financial resources. I think that we're talking about showing a seriousness about the weapons and armaments that will enable this not to happen. And if you go back and you look at the comparison between Barack Obama and Joe Biden, that's when Vladimir Putin made his incursions into Ukraine, the Crimea, of course, and then also the eastern Ukrainian area, especially the Donbass region. But I don't think that you want to reward a person like Putin saying that we're just going to draw the lines where they are, because what guarantee that you have that Putin will not continue on? So I think there comes a point of no return when you have to realize that, peace and talk and negotiation and compromise are seen as weakness by someone like a Vladimir Putin.
So if you were advising the president right now, if you had 30 minutes with him in the Oval Office tonight, what would you say to him? Is this the moment to go for the kill?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is you have to show Vladimir Putin that you're very serious about him not having supporting this invasion that he had against a sovereign nation state. I think it's very important that we up the ante as far as providing more of our liquefied natural gas to countries in Western Europe so that they can cut the ties with the Soviet Union. I think we also have to put economic pressure on China, because there's a reason why North Koreans are there fighting in Ukraine, and that's because of the blessing of China. But also, again, I think you have to show that you're going to support the type of weaponry. If the Western European countries, NATO purchases these weapons and turn it over to Ukraine, that's fine. But we need to have an air cap that is up there preventing these drones and these aerial incursions into some of these other sovereign nations. That's what he has to see.
Colonel, stay there. I'm going to come back to you, and I'm going to pick you up on that China point in a moment. First, I'm going to bring in Sarah Selip, Republican strategist. Good evening, Sarah. It does strike me, am I wrong in thinking it strikes me that the relationship that Trump has with Putin is clearly much better than the relationship he has with Zelensky? It doesn't strike me he particularly likes Zelensky, and it strikes me that he's just not willing to just go that extra mile to really kick Putin when he's down.
That's a really good way to put it. So how I see it, over the past 6 years, when we've been seeing Zelensky, if you look at social media, you still see him as unserious. It goes to the sweatshirts, it's the pomp and circumstance, the lack of respect in that sense that he has for Trump, showing up in the sweatsuits or whatever he does.
Well, he wore a suit. He wore a suit on Friday, just about.
He tried his best. But I guess it does come down to respect for Trump. He understands that. He's been working with dignitaries since he was a kid, basically, and he understands that. He does have a better relationship with Putin because Zelensky isn't there yet. He's expecting everyone to give him what he wants.
I mean, to be fair to the guy, he is the one that's been invaded. He is the one who, could easily have fled, instead stayed and fight. Putin is the unelected tyrant. He is the attacker. He is a dictator. He is an fundamentally evil guy. Is it not slightly worrying that the leader of the free world seems more comfortable discussing carving up the map, essentially, with the Kremlin than he does with the people who've been attacked?
I think that Zelensky is the one who's not receptive to what Trump is saying. Because if you circle back to the past 6 months, the past year, when Trump has had these conversations, his rhetoric on all of the Ukrainian, Putin thing, it's just wild, because we have been, as Republicans, giving Ukraine more and more and more and more, and yet Zelensky isn't giving them the respect. Putin obviously is going to do whatever he wants. He's unelected. He will take and take and take. But Zelensky expects the U.S. government to give him a blank check for whatever he thinks he needs, and that is not the case with Trump in charge.
Colonel West, does it make you feel slightly uncomfortable when you see the sort of relationship that Trump has with Putin being a little bit more, well, not sympathetic's the wrong word, but certainly emollient to each other, whereas, Zelensky gets the tongue lashings?
Well, I will agree with the young lady there with you in that there's a little issue about deference. Without a doubt, the president likes to have that level of respect. But I think also, as you just pointed out, you have to see an evil dictator for who they are. and you have to be able to stand against them and say that, there's a point of no return, and there's a line that we're not going to allow you to continue to cross. We saw that when we went after the Iranian nuclear facilities. I don't know if this quote unquote ceasefire is going to hold up with Hamas in Gaza because they haven't changed their charter, and we see they have already killed 2 Israeli soldiers just recently. So I think there comes a point in time when, as I stated, dictators understand strength and might. We failed to show that during the late 1930s, and we saw what happened with Adolf Hitler and World War II. And this threat of us going into World War III with Vladimir Putin, if we just stand up to him, I think that's an empty threat. I think that's, a deceptive rhetoric because I believe that we can make Putin back down, and we can get the Russian people to make Putin back down.
Do you think Donald Trump is you do think Donald Trump does have the stomach to get this over the line then?
Well, I think what Donald Trump may be trying to do, the president may be trying to do, is coax Putin to come to a table. But we have already tried that. We've gone down that path. And
Putin's laughing at it. Putin's laughing at us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's thumbing the nose. I mean, after the Alaska summit, we saw him increase attacks. So I believe that there's only a couple of things he understands: the strength and might, and not sitting down and trying to compromise, appease, or acquiesce to him at some table. He invaded a sovereign nation state, and I think that it's about time. We've seen this, wash, repeat over and over again, with Georgia and some of the other countries there in Eastern Europe. It has to stop. It has to end.
Sarah Selip, Colonel West is completely correct there. We must stand up to tyrants. We must show a message. But it doesn't seem the one person that seems unwilling to do that at the moment is the president.
We're just caught in the middle of too many arguments right now. I mean, Trump is the deal maker in chief, right? We know that he is the guy to get things done. He can help build relationships, but are we putting American interests first by taking out all of the resources that we have, all of the money? I mean, we're in the middle of a 19-day government shutdown, or 20-day, whatever it is at this point. And yet we're still talking about Ukraine and the Middle East and all of those situations that have nothing to do with us, except if they join the UN, if there is any way that we are brought in, it's because we're forced to. Trump is the one who can handle it, but at this point, we need to focus on our national interests as well.
Do you think he's bitten off more than he can chew in terms of Ukraine? He promised he could end it in a week. He promised he ended it within his first term. All sorts of promises, and here we are. 11 months later, it's still looking pretty deadlocked. Has he met his match yet?
I just want to blame Biden and the administration for that. This situation should have been taken care of years ago, right when it started, right? Nip it in the bud. But in that way, Republicans didn't really have a hand. We do now. Trump is the guy to get things done. The world is looking at him.
Trump's saying give up land. Give up land now. Reward the invader. As Colonel West says, it's chilling echoes of 1936 and 37 and the appeasement of Hitler. But basically, might is right. Strong men get their own way. And you'd happily see a deal that would see the invaded Ukraine have to surrender sovereign territory.
Right.
Yeah, you would.
I think we're just exhausted. The past few years, all we've been able to say, when I was prepping for this, I just kept thinking, what is there to say now except for the clips of, is Zelensky going to get kicked out of the White House? Are people going to call Trump Putin's puppet again? It is the same exact rhetoric, but we did give them billions and billions and billions of dollars over the past 6 years. And that puts our hands behind our backs and tie them. We just have to get to the finish line. Everybody's exhausted, and we, as a country, gave them too much when Democrats were in charge.
Alan West, what do you make of that?
Well, I agree with her wholeheartedly. I mean, this is not about writing a blank check to the Ukrainians so that they can use it for unemployment and benefits thereof. I think that what we saw back in the...
Well, they're using it on missiles and bullets mostly, right?
Yeah, but there's a little bit of accountability issue that we see. I mean, it's not the same as what we saw with the United States of America prior to entering into World War II and the support that we were giving to England, as a matter of fact, during the Battle of Britain. So again, when you have an agreement where the NATO nations, the Western European nations, say, "Hey, look, we'll buy this weaponry and we will get it to Ukraine," I think that that's a great path. We don't end up losing any money for that. We are paid for that support. But without a doubt, I think that President Trump has to understand that there is no sitting down and discussing things with Vladimir Putin, because he has clearly shown that that's not what he wants. And I'm not trying to be, the thing that everyone will come out and say, Alan West is a neocon. No, I mean, I've been on battlefields and I've seen soldiers lose their lives. I don't want to see that. But what I do understand is that sometimes the only way you deal with a bully is to smack him in his mouth. And that's exactly the situation that we have right now.
But is it really smacking him in the mouth, Colonel, if he's going to be rewarded with vast swathes of the Donbass region?
No, it's not.
But that's the Trump deal on the table. Trump's saying to Zelensky, accept the battle lines. It's a negotiation about where the line is, not about returning to pre-February 2022 borders or even 2014 borders taking in Crimea. Crimea is already gone essentially in the eyes of Donald Trump. But he's saying you might be able to get a little bit of land back, but you're not getting it all. That's rewarding the invader, isn't it?
Yeah, you are rewarding the invader. And the only thing I can see by way of caveating that is that if you are given the Donbass region and you have already gone in and taken Crimea, we're going to make sure that we honor the agreement, I believe from 1993 or 1996, when Ukraine decided, we signed an agreement with them that if they surrendered their nuclear weapons, we will provide them protection. Then we need to talk about a security protection force, a NATO security protection force that will be on the ground in Ukraine to make sure that no further incursions continue on. So you have to, once again, try to put Vladimir Putin in an untenable position. The only way you get to keep this region is that we will put people on the ground to ensure that you don't extend any further, or you just get out and you don't get that region, period. So I think that has to be the tough thing. You cannot just wantonly, unconditionally surrender the territory of a sovereign nation, because that's exactly what happened with the Sudetenland. That's exactly what happened with Czechoslovakia in the late 1930s.
Colonel West, the people that are going to be really paying this a close attention are probably sitting in Taiwan right now, looking a little bit nervous. China is watching, as you made the point earlier. If Donald Trump does cede territory to Vladimir Putin in terms of a Ukraine peace deal, which I think we kind of all accept is where this is heading if a deal ever gets over the line. What message does that send to the communists in China and what they can do with Taiwan? And the fact is that essentially, while the world may make a massive stink for 3 months, the West will kick off, they'll arm, they'll shout, and then in the end they'll fold. This is basically a green light for the Chinese to seize Taiwan, isn't it?
Yeah, weakness is enticing. And, if you go back to what happened during the Biden administration, when we had that horrible, disengagement from Afghanistan, a place where I spent 2.5 years of my life, that gave a green light to China. That gave a green light to Iran. That gave a green light to Russia. And so if they continue to see, a lot of talk, or as we say down here in Texas, all hat but no cattle, that's just going to encourage them to continue on. And I would be very nervous if I am Taiwan, because we already see what China is doing in the South China Sea, attacking Philippine ships in the Scarborough Shoals. So they're very aggressive in what they're doing. So there are many different ways. It doesn't always have to be a military solution. It can be an economic solution. It can be a diplomatic solution where we bring by more nations to stand against these two belligerent countries, which are forming a 21st century axis of evil.
Would you like to see America arming the Taiwanese, though, in a way that in the run up to the invasion of Ukraine, and always really from 2014 and before, more could have been done as a deterrent in Ukraine, training, arms, militia. Would you like to see that sort of America playing that sort of role in Taiwan?
I would like to see the United States of America get serious about having a credible military deterrent force. I'll give you a great example. It's going to hurt my heart to say this, Harry, but the means by which you extend a nation's hegemonic power is not through a great army. I mean, if that were the case, the Spartans would have ruled the ancient world, but it was the Athenians, because the Athenians had the strong navy. We see China building up their maritime force, and what has happened with our maritime force. During the Reagan administration, we had over 500 surface naval warships. Now today, we have less than 250 surface warships. And so we've gone in the wrong direction as far as our maritime strength. So I'd like to see us really build up our credible deterrent military force, especially in the Pacific. And that sends a message to China.
Colonel West, thank you for joining us this evening on Harry Cole, Save the West. Sarah Selip, what do you reckon the odds are of President Trump, arming the Taiwanese next? And if he does give up that land, as you say, in 30 seconds, isn't that just a green light to the Chinese?
I have no idea. Let's ask the Lieutenant Colonel again.